Hi, welcome to the Shepherd Dress Doc Talk. This is episode 182A. As you might notice, it's me and Plant again. So Julie will be doing her Acts portion alone this week. But here I am with this week's Torah portion, 182A. If you would like to see the previous years, it's 37A and B and 89A and B. And as I said, there was no last year's because we were traveling in Israel. I thought I would look at just really, I want to do a little comparison this week and look at Exodus 29 with this week's Torah portion. I should probably tell you what that is. We are in the book of Leviticus 1 to 6, 7. So I want to look at Exodus 29 with Leviticus, this week's Torah portion. So let's go over to 29 and let's look at a few things that are discussed there. Exodus 29, this is when Moses is still up on the Mount Sinai and the Lord is speaking to him. He has given him the layout of what the tabernacle is going to look like. However, he's not given him the golden altar yet, because first he's going to tell about bringing the priest in. And he talks about what's going to happen once this tabernacle is erected, how he, as Moses, is going to interact with it to bring in Aaron and his sons. It begins in 29 with the first offering that Moses is going to bring will be a sin offering. And that's in 29, 12, and 14. In verse 12, it talks about taking the blood of this offering and putting it on the horns of the altar. That would be the brazen altar outside. And also then pouring it at the base of the altar. Then after that we have in 29, the next thing is then there is a burnt offering. And then it goes into a peace offering. And that peace offering is what becomes the ram of ordination for Aaron and his sons. And so that's what brings them into that unity, being able to serve before the Lord. And then it moves through. Anyway, I want to set that up because now let's go to Leviticus. Leviticus 1 begins with the type of a burnt offering. All right. Notice that in Leviticus 1, the Lord is now telling Moses it's how any man that wants to draw near. Leviticus 1:1, it says, "And Yahweh called to Moses and spoke to him from the tent of the appointment. And some will say, and he called to Moses and Yahweh spoke to him. I'm not sure. Anyway, just telling you if yours reads differently, that's okay. So right here we have where the Lord is calling, and he's calling him from, if you remember where we just left, he's calling him from the tabernacle. Okay. Now, I'd like to go back to 29. I'm going to be going back and forth between 29 and 1 through 4. Verse 42 of Exodus 29 says, "A continuing offering for your generations at the door of the tent of appointment before the Lord, where I shall meet with you to speak with you." And the Lord is speaking to Moses here, okay? And this is, of course, the high priest is going to take over this job, and the priest, however, right now he's talking to Moses. Moses is the one who's going to be doing these things for 7 days, okay? One more thing in 29 before we go back over. If you look over, up to the chapter, to verse 36 of 29, it says, "And prepare a bull each day as a sin offering for atonement. And you shall cleanse the altar when you make atonement for it, and you shall anoint it and set it apart. For 7 days you shall make atonement for the altar and set it apart, and the altar shall be most holy. Whatever touches the altar shall be set apart." All right, and then it goes on about the daily offerings of the 2 lambs. But for 7 days, Moses is the one who's going to be doing these offerings on behalf of Aaron and his sons. It's only in 29 where the wave offering that Aaron and his sons have anything to do with it, and that's in verses 24, it says, this is 29:24 of Exodus, "And you shall put all these in the hands of Aaron and in the hands of his sons, and you shall wave them, a wave offering before Yahweh. Then you shall take them from their hands and burn them on the altar as an ascent offering, as a sweet fragrance before the Lord. This is an offering made by fire. So Moses is doing all of this. Now, if you notice, we said that we read where it's going to be, the tent is where he's going to speak to him. Well, isn't this awesome? Because that's not saying inside. He's saying that he's going to be speaking to him in front of the tent of meetings, at the brazen altar, okay, where we give of ourselves. So when we look at chapter 40 of Exodus, and Moses and Aaron are standing in front of the tent of meetings, and now I'm going to Exodus 40, verse 34. It says, the cloud covered the tent of appointment, and the glory of God, Yahweh, filled the dwelling place. And Moses was not able to come into the tent of appointment because the cloud dwelt on it, and the glory of Yahweh filled the dwelling place. Okay. Yet, when we turn the page to the because this is just a continuation, okay? And Yahweh called to Moses and spoke to him. And the word the word Vayikra, okay? The last letter is an aleph. And when you look at it in the Hebrew text, the aleph is very small. And so it said that 2 or 3 different ideas about this small letter. One of them is that when the Lord spoke to him, he spoke directly and only to Moses for Moses to hear. Remember, he's not on the mount at this point. He is on the ground, okay? He is there in the tabernacle, all right? He's standing before the tent of meetings at the brazen altar. Didn't we just read in 29 that that's the place that the Lord will speak to Moses? So that's where Moses is standing. So I just see it as interesting as maybe it wasn't the thought that that's the only place he's going to talk to Moses, and I'd say it's not, because Moses goes in and out. However, at this point, it was kind of a foreshadowing on the mountain where the Lord is speaking to him right there before he goes in. And here's what he says to him. I'm paraphrasing. Hey, I already told you what you should do for Aaron and his sons for 7 days. But the people are going to now be in the place of Aaron, and Aaron's going to be in your place. And now the people need to know what they can and can't do, how they're going to draw near. What's interesting is where in chapter 29, when dealing with the priest, we have the Lord beginning with Moses giving a sin offering. But here, dealing with the people, it starts with an ascent offering. Leviticus starts with the ascent offering, goes to the grain offering, which hooks in with the ascent offering, then to a peace offering. All right, the sin offering is later. It's in chapter 4, okay? It's after we get to all these voluntary drawing near. Because again, the Lord's like, hey, if you want to draw near, here I am. So what I find so interesting is Moses for 7 days brings this sin offering, and he brings a bull. And if we go over to chapter 4 of Leviticus, we know that bringing a bull is for the priest. However, over to verse 14 of Leviticus 4, it says, when the sin which they have sinned, it's talking about the whole of Israel, becomes known, and they assemble and bring a young bull as a sin offering before the tent of appointment. Okay, so we have the same thing. It's also a bull, right? And the elders of the congregation shall lay their hands on the bull before the Lord, and the bull shall be slain before the Lord. And the anointed priest shall bring some of the bull's blood into the tent of the appointment. And the priest shall dip his fingers in the blood and sprinkle it 7 times before the veil. Verse 18, but some of the blood will be on the horns of the altar before the Lord in the tent of the appointment. And then pour the blood around the base of the altar. Right? Whether it's for the priest or it's for the nation, both of them are having the blood put on the horns, okay, and blood being brought in and sprinkled. Now, if we go back to 29, Moses, in no way or no place does the Lord tell Moses to sprinkle it inside the holy place on the veil. He tells them to put it on the horns of the altar and then to pour it around the base. I find this interesting because while in chapter 4 we see that blood is supposed to come into the holy place, in the end of Exodus 40 they can't go in yet. And we know from Exodus 29 that for 7 days they're not going to be going in. There's nothing that Moses is doing that's requiring them to go in. So what we actually have is the Lord whispering to Moses something he didn't know. He didn't know that all of Israel would be allowed to come to the altar and bring their offerings. So as Moses is doing this for 7 days, back to Exodus 29, for Aaron and his sons, I would like to suggest that that's one for every millennium. I know we touched on this before, but if that's one for every millennium, then what it does is it represents how Israel is able to still bring their things because of the blood that, or the offering, right, that is given by Messiah, okay? That's what's allowing us. Now, that doesn't excuse us or remove our responsibility of personal accountability, which we see again in chapter 4 in Leviticus, where when we have a sin offering, we acknowledge our shortfalling and we, Lord, forgive us, and then we want to draw near, okay? And we've talked about that and how in the blood is life. We've talked about that previous years. But I just wanted to really show you how I think Moses getting the idea or being spoken to about how man is going to draw near while he's standing in the tabernacle. This is the stuff going on in that first day. The Lord is, hey, Moses, speaking to him, giving him hope and giving the rest of the nation hope. You know, it said that, well, let's think of it this way. Leviticus 1 through 8 is information that was probably downloaded to Moses like this as we go into those 7 days of the ordination. Moses is, again, acting as a type of Messiah by providing that sin offering. If you realize, Aaron, the high priest, had to have somebody who could do it for him because it points to the idea that nobody can do it for themselves. Even when we read about it in chapter 4 for Aaron, it doesn't say who does it for the priest. And when we read about it for everyone else, it's the priest that draws near on their behalf. Now, I bring this up because I have one more thing that's going to tie it all together. You know, in the Word, I believe it's every 49th count when you go through Genesis and Exodus, it says Torah. So like you'll get the T or the Tav, and so spelling it in Hebrew. And then if you go past Leviticus and you go into the book of Numbers and Deuteronomy, okay, there you have every 49th letter, or 50th, I think it's 49th, every 49th letter, you have Torah but spelled backwards, okay? So it would start with the H and that's as far as backwards as I can get, okay? All right, so what you have is Torah written this way and Torah written this way, both pointing to what? The sinner. If you take the book of Leviticus and you were to count every 7th letter, you get Yoveh. You get the name of Yoveh. Pretty cool, huh? So you have the first 2 pointing towards and the last 2 pointing backwards towards. Isn't this how life is set up with Yeshua as that sinner? You see, everyone before Messiah were waiting for this Messiah to come, take on our guilt, be that sin offering for us, okay? The eternal, to remove the sin of Adam and to be able to now restore life, okay? All right. Then after we know of it, so we're looking back to what he did on the cross. But because we look back or because you look forward doesn't minimize what happened in the middle. It doesn't minimize that Messiah, Yeshua, Jesus Christ came, died, was buried, and rose again. It doesn't make it less important for those behind or those in front that look back or look forward. Leviticus is the same way. Whether you're looking from Genesis or you're looking from Deuteronomy, it's just as important. It's the heart of the word. It's how we get to draw near. And let's remember that Moses is the one, as a type of Messiah, who had to give for 7 days the sin offering in order to allow Aaron to even the next step to go through the ordination. And Moses did all the other offerings on behalf of Aaron as well. When Messiah died for us on the cross and rose again, he was every one of these offerings. He was, and he is, and he will be. These offerings will be back in action when we get here, or when he comes back. when he comes to reign. All right, it will be back in action. So we need to be careful how we view it, to see it as life and the ability to draw near, not to see it as a pagan way where we're just appeasing gods, but to see it as we're serving a loving God, and he's given us a way to draw near through Messiah. And on the earthly, he will provide that way also, because he spoke to Moses, not on the mountain, but when he was in the tabernacle, of how the people can participate in that home. Because let's just end with this. Back in chapter 29, verse 45 says, "And I shall dwell in the midst of the children of Israel, and shall be their Elohim. And they shall know that I am Yahweh, their Elohim, who brought them out of the land of Egypt, to dwell in their midst. I am Yahweh, their Elohim." The whole function of the tabernacle is so that he could dwell with us. That's why. So we need to remember that. It's not to appease him. It's so he could come with us. So while you might read over the offerings and think, all the blood, look at it and go, all the life, all the opportunities he's provided for mankind, for us to draw near, and he allowed Yeshua to be the one who came, and read Hebrews, who came and provided us a way into the eternal, not into the earthly, but into the eternal. And here is the way into the earthly. We want to be able to do both, because remember, New Jerusalem comes here. Millennium's happening here. Anyway, I thank you so much for joining us, me, and we hope you have a great week. I hope you do get to catch Acts on the other side with Julie. Shalom.